Chapter 2. The next day Steve woke up, as usual, to the clock radio. Unusually, he found himself listening to it, and even more strangely, it annoyed him. He turned over in bed and thumped the switch, leaving the bedroom to the birds, noisy Fords, and myriad other sounds in the morning. He stared at the ceiling. Hangover? No, he'd only had a couple of glasses of wine last night. Anyway, his head didn't hurt, and he felt all right, sort of, except he was wide awake. That was odd too, as most days he only really started to wake up when the bus into work. He glanced at the clock radio. He still had a good half hour until he had to leave, so he tried to doze. As he closed his eyes, the world spun. About 15 years ago, he'd gone to Scotland with his parents, and once he'd crawled up to the edge of a granite cliff and peered over at the rocks and sea hundreds of feet beneath. He remembered amazement, awe, and no little fear, but most of all, he remembered the spiraling vertigo. That was what he was feeling now. He gripped the sides of the bed and opened his eyes rapidly, sweating. The flu? Those pills he took last night? Could be, but he'd never been ill like that before, nor taken anything from a chemist that shook him up so badly. For a moment he was worried, but then the morning took over again, and the sound of a bus pulling up the hill reminded and reassured him that another normal day was waiting. He got out of bed and, standing up, felt fine once more. The coffee and eggs at breakfast tasted really good, but he didn't feel like reading his paper on the bus. For some reason, he wasn't interested in Rockstar Eats Own Hand Sells Guitar, which seemed to be the most earth-shaking intelligence on offer. Back in the office, he homed in on Emily. "Hey, Emily," he said, "those pills really seem to have done the trick. No flu, not a sniffle, I'm feeling really awake. They're good stuff. What are they called? I'd like to get some, just for next time, you know." She giggled, a short, high-pitched stutter like a pony neighing. "Glad they seem to have worked, Steve. I can't remember their name, though. I've had them for a while. Still, if it comes back to me, I'll let you know." "You've usually got such a good memory, Emily," said Steve ingratiatingly. "Me, mine's like a sieve. Can't remember things like buying milk or doctor's appointments. Oh, no." "What's up?" asked Emily, wondering for a second whether she'd miscalculated something, and wondering, just for a moment, what exactly she'd done. Just for a moment, and then she realised. "Forgotten an appointment?" "Dentist. What's the time? Look, I've got to rush. See you at lunch, if I've got any teeth left." And he dashed into the boss's office to explain his impending absence. He rushed out of the building. His dentist was about half a mile away, and by walking fast he could make it. Past the bombed church, in the roundabouts, past the police station, up the hill, past the library, past the reservoir, and into Dr. V. Sells, known since childhood as Dr. Weasel. The receptionist looked through a window. "Hello, Miss Wilkinson. Hello, Mr. Trevathan. Take a seat. He's running late." And he dived into the piles of House and Garden from 1972. Back in the office, the Morning Post had been sorted and distributed, and there was, as usual, half an hour's hiatus before the pre-lunch mailbags came in. Jill went out to round up all the outgoing mail from the 7 floors, leaving Emily to herself. She checked her watch and felt the sea of infinite boredom recede a little. Any minute now, and the first part of her plan would start to work. Deep within Steve's brain, profound changes were taking place. The tendrils of diabolic chemistry insinuated into his hippocampus, a small lump of grey matter normally concerned with sorting Steve's experience, such as they were, into long-term recall, and started to subtly rewire his memory mechanisms. Large portions of his mind were converted into the biological equivalent of RAM, ready to record experiences, and, having recorded them, control his mind as a program controls a computer's processor. Elsewhere, similar changes were taking place, but for now, things were ready just to record. Just for now. The triggers to load the program were complex. If Steve was interested, then whatever it was that held his interest would be stored, sorted, and activated. If he was frightened, amused, intrigued, it would all be recorded. But for this to work, he had to be capable of taking an interest in the first place. So part of Emily's chemical mishmash sharpened his wits, heightened his awareness, upped his IQ to just short of genius. This, she thought, was a nice move. Not only did it ensure that he would be only too capable of appreciating what was happening to him, he might even fight back, which would round off the whole thing nicely. And, she thought, with a demonic delight, it would serve him right to be given a glimpse of what it's like to have an intelligence confronted with infinite boredom. Steve was, as the plan demanded, unaware of the mental mayhem crystallizing beneath his cranium, but he was getting painfully aware of a lot of other things as he sat in the Formica and chipboard waiting room. The posters of rabbits noshing carrots and jaunty poems about plaque, "Clean, clean, clean your teeth, or else the germs get underneath," were fading, and a couple flapped loose at the corners. They'd been there since he'd started seeing Dr. Weasel, and, he mused, the place probably hadn't seen a touch of paint for 10 years before that. The bright orange and grey polypropylene bucket chairs finished off a fine example of early 60s public health design. Now, why did he think that? He'd been here every 6 months for years, and usually only worried about whether he'd get a filling or not. Those old magazines, did people really think that the ideal home looked like that? The clothes they wore in the photos looked laughable too, but he could remember when he'd thought they looked good. How strange. Perhaps the jacket and jeans he was wearing now would look equally ridiculous in 10 years' time. The buzzer chainsawed its way into his daydreams and the receptionist looked up. Mr. Trevathan? He stood up and went into the surgery. Dr. Sells was shuffling through some papers at a desk, and the chair sat in the middle of the room beneath the usual battery of technology. Hello, Steve, said the dentist. Sit down, please. Now then, any problems since last time? It's good to see you keeping these checkups. Some people just don't bother after they leave home, and when something goes wrong, there are all sorts of things to put right. How's your mother, by the way? It was America she moved to, wasn't it? As usual, Steve had to wait for 3 or 4 questions to go past before he could get a word in. Yeah, she's settled down in North Dakota and she's doing fine. I might go over to see her at Christmas. Her teeth are okay too, but I wouldn't want to miss anything that needs looking at. A fine attitude. Now then, lie down and open up. Steve looked up at the light. That's new, isn't it? The old one was a different colour. That's right, very observant. This one's a new low voltage design, much more reliable and brighter too. I don't think anyone else has noticed. Open wide. The nurse hooked in some suction and went to get Steve's notes. 3's okay, 2's okay, 1's okay, 1's okay, 2's okay, 3's okay. Filling of 4's a little bitty, we'll sort that out. Dr. Sells continued chanting his litany as Steve noticed, for the first time it seemed, the antiseptic smell, the faint noise of the machinery behind the dentist, the charts on the wall and the rows of dentures on the shelves. He felt the faint scratching inside his head as the dentist probed away. As Steve had forgotten about the appointment, he hadn't given his teeth the customary vigorous pre-checkup brushing, and this was apparently noticeable. Hello, we haven't been very thorough with our brushing, have we? Typical quack, thought Steve, lapsing into patronising parental tones. Doctor knows best. Well, there's a cavity just starting one of your premolars and a slightly messy filling to clean up. We'll have a poke around and fix them. Steve had collected a lot of fillings from a chocolate childhood, and the memories to match. As various instruments of torture were produced and wine sucked and scrunched their way around his mouth, he remembered the old fears with a vividness that surprised him. He winced as the drill scoured the cavity, and was very relieved at the instruction to rinse and spit. Strange taste, this pink liquid. While I was fixing those teeth, Steve, I spotted something that might be serious. I'd better have a look at it. This was new. He opened his mouth obediently and became apprehensive as Dr. Sell's usual banter failed to intersperse his dental deliberations. Finally, the dentist stood up and Steve closed his mouth. One of your molars is misplaced. I don't know why I didn't catch it before, but there you go. Normally I'd leave it as it's been there for years without causing any problems, but there are signs that you've got some more teeth coming through underneath. Eh? You mean I'm teething? No, not quite. It's not uncommon for some people to have a third set of teeth at some point during their lives, and you might be one of them. In any case, I should really get that molar out, otherwise it could be very bad for your jaw. It's not really fair that you should have to have a tooth pulled since you're one of my better patients, but it's a good thing I caught it. Gas or needle? He means it, Steve thought. He hadn't had a tooth out before, and the prospect frightened him. Adrenaline started to seep into his bloodstream. His heart speeded up, but in his brain the new mechanisms fired up and channeled the streams of his senses into the almost infinite capacity of the revamped memory. Oh, gas, I think. Is it dangerous? No, not very. Oh, how reassuring. What soothing weasel words. Is the needle safer? There's nothing to worry about with either method, but the gas hurts less. Fine. Will it take long? About half an hour, and you should be okay within the hour. Not driving, are you? I walked here. No problems then. You might find things a bit fuzzy for a while, but it wears off. Steve remembered something Emily had said, and for the first time felt sadness for a thing which had never happened. Will I dream? Hard to say. Some people do, but most don't. The nurse had been tinkering with the mess of tubes and cylinders and brought it to the side of the chair. While she prepared a tray of gleaming steel instruments, some of which Steve thought would look more in keeping in his local garage, Dr. Sells continued his spiel. Now then, I want you to breathe deeply from the mask while counting to 10. You won't get past about 7, but you won't notice that. Ready, Sandra? The nurse passed over a face mask, which the dentist placed over Steve's mouth. Righty-o, start breathing and counting. Sweet dreams. Here we go then. 1, suck. 2, blow. 3, suck. 4, blow. This is quite pleasant. Where was I? Teeth. In the surgery, the dentist checked Steve's pulse, eyes, and respiration. Satisfied that his patient was well under, he gave him a few seconds more and started to prepare for oral excavation. Back at the office, Jill wanted to know what Emily was finding so funny. Emily merely giggled and went on sorting the post. All that day she'd been in high spirits, surprising those who were used to her normal sarcastic mood. To those who asked why, she replied only that life's a gas, isn't it?